Once again, I am asking you, what if Dragapult was in Gen 1 OU? Now, I did Dragapult a year ago, and when you've made over 200 videos, sometimes some of them just completely slip your mind. So I'm over real. I have no idea what I said about Dragapult in that original video. But I figured it could be a fun one just to revisit, since now I'm just, in general, much more knowledgeable on Gen 1. And I probably should have looked over it just to see what I went over. But I think for the most part, I can probably make a guess, given around the time I made the video. I think I talked about how Dragon Darts was a pretty good stab option because there was no resistances. And I'm pretty sure I probably had Hyper Beam like in one of these slots instead of one of the coverage moves, just to try to keep it as a mixed attacker that can take on pretty much anything. I'm wiser now. And with these stats and with the typing, I can definitely say Dragapult is much better than when I originally went over it, which is saying a lot because it's pretty darn good. Let's just ignore the typing and the stats for a bit and only talk about its move pool. Starting off with Dragon Darts, it is 50 base power, but it has it can hit twice basically, which that alone kind of makes it like a slightly stronger double kick, except it's special. However, it is a lot better than that. For starters, the best Pokemon that's using double kick is probably Jolteon, and with a crit that's only doing half damage to Chansey and doing absolutely nothing to nothing else. Dragapult here has base 100 special attack, which is the exact same as Starmie's 100 special. And it has stab. Jolteon does not. So already, Dragon Darts is hitting a lot stronger. And because of how multi-hit moves work in Gen 1, in newer gens, every single individual hit has a chance to crit. But in Gen 1, if one of them crits, all of them crits. Which is really big if something like Dragon Darts does get the crit. And with 142 base speed, it is a high chance that it will crit. And here's the thing, because it's a dragon type, there's no fairy or steel. There's not a single thing in the tier that can resist it. Even normal has rock to resist and has ghost to be immune. Dragon Darts here can hit anything for free. And since you are by far the fastest Pokemon in the game, and since there's no Choice Scarf or anything like that, you are always going to be able to use it no problem. And your other moves are just great as well. Thunderbolt is great coverage, especially since the water types such as, let's say, Starmie, are just really big threats in the meta. Being able to outspeed those and potentially get a crit, you can do devastating damage. Same thing as Slowbro. Even though you're not a pure electric type, or have any electric stab, you have the ability to seriously threaten Slowbro with a crit, and you're statistically more likely to get a crit than even Jolteon. Fire Blast, I don't think this is one I went over with the original, because I think when I made the original Dragapult video, that was still around the time where, outside of actual fire types like Mega Charizard Y, I figured Fire Blast wasn't a very good offensive type, but with 30% chance to burn, that alone is really threatening on Tauros, especially since you're faster. It's good on Snorlax and Rhydon, but to be honest, it's definitely the move you can probably swat out the easiest. But then again, it's also strong against Exeggutor and Jinx, and those are two where, especially for Exeggutor's case, you could use Dragon Darts, but Fire Blast definitely does make it a lot easier. So I take it back, perhaps Thunder Wave is the move that you can most easily cut, but even then, you're the fastest Thunder Wave spreader. You could outspeed fast things like Starmie, Alakazam, Jolteon, and paralyze them first, which is not only useful in of itself, but also, I think I talked about this with my Miraidon video with an impressive 135 base speed, but the fastest Pokemon with Thunder Wave is always going to have an inherent advantage with everything it faces, since Thunder Wave has a 25% chance for the Pokemon to not do anything. So against fast Pokemon, or for anything really, Dragapult getting a free turn is huge, because it's already kind of a scummy Pokemon that's always kind of banking on its crits. So, that's just very big. Imagine you paralyze Starmie, it's fully paralyzed, and then you go for a Thunderbolt. Even without a crit, that's doing devastating damage, especially if your Dragapult isn't paralyzed itself. But along with these moves, it also has these here. With 120 attack, Body Slam and Hyper Beam are both pretty effective, both on Alakazam and to a lesser extent Chansey. I'm pretty sure Counter does work on Dragapult though, because of just how Gen 1 works. Which, by the way, I guess that's technically something you can use as well. Actually, yeah, let's talk about that. Let's get rid of Confuse Ray, since Confuse Ray is bad. Or can you learn Counter? I guess I'm just assuming you can. No, you cannot. Okay, never mind. We have to stay with the crappy Confuse Ray. But yeah, either way though, Body Slam and Hyper Beam are really good attacking options. You don't really need anything else. Earthquake is pretty nice, but since you're so fast, Gengar is scared of a Thunder Wave anyways. Surf is only really if you want to OHKO Rhydon. Same with Hydro Pump. So not really worth it, because you don't really care too much about Rhydon in the first place. Because despite your stats being 75 in both defenses and only 88 base HP, you're kind of surprisingly tanky. Don't use Confuse Ray, it's just very bad on it, but I just needed a fourth move to put here. And I figured Confuse Ray would be better than Hydro Pump, since there's already Surf. You don't learn any ice coverage, I'm pretty sure, which is really unfortunate. But then again, it might be a little too good if it did have it. Yeah, I don't see it here. But I guess you did see... what's it called? You did see, like, Reflect and Light Screen, if you want to use those for whatever reason. So that's just the moves. Let's get on to the typing. Ghost Dragon is really good. And I guarantee you, at the time when I made the original video, I probably went over how Blizzard was a big problem, which is really stupid. Because now that I've gone over so many Pokemon with Quad 4 weaknesses, and since I just went over Torterra, who has a Quad weakness and can still survive Ice moves, Dragapult being weak to Ice is not really a big deal whatsoever. It's just a weakness, or the only weakness, minus another Dragapult with Dragon Darts. You can very easily, like, work around that. And even for the things with ice coverage, Chansey is probably your best bet, since it can probably handle non-crit Body Slams and Hyper Beams. But Jinx is weak to Fire Blast, Cloyster is weak to Thunderbolt, Lapras, who really cares? And Dragon Darts hits everything neutrally. Chansey is the only thing that doesn't really care switching into a crit. But even then, like, you can still do stuff. Although Chansey is probably your worst matchup just in general. And I've already talked about the stats pretty much throughout this, so don't need to go over too much anymore. It's just really good for mixed attacking stats. And Dragapult is a Pokemon that really, really benefits from having the physical special split. Having max attack and special attack along with your defenses, just evening everything out, is so great. And I don't even want to think about how good Dragapult would be in Gen 2. Gen 2 with physical Shadow Ball, you probably get rid of Fire Blast, if I had to guess. It just sounds terrifying. But that's everything so far. Dragapult is probably one of, if not the best pseudo-legendaries you can have. Metagross and Baxcalibur are the only ones I can think of that can really challenge it. Baxcalibur, I don't think would be better, since I feel like even though Ice is really good, it's a very terrifying mix attacker with a nice Ice immunity. I feel like it just isn't as broken as like Dragapult does. Because along with the stats in the move pool, also keep in mind because of its typing, I already talked about why the Ice weakness is just a standard weakness, nothing too crippling. It has a resistance to Fire, Water, Electric, and Grass. All four of those are relevant. Victory Bell is an OU now, which it wasn't when I originally made my video. You have a resistance as well with Surf, which means even though Thunder Wave is very damning, even with max special, you can very easily fish for those crits. Fire is good, since with Dragapult in the format, that in of itself just makes its resistance to fire potentially come up. And resistance to electric is pretty self-explanatory. And along with that, you have all the benefits that Ghost gives you. Normal is the best offensive type in the game, and you're immune to Body Slam, Slash, Hyper Beam, and most importantly, Explosion. But unlike Gengar, you're not weak to Psychic and Ground. So that's why I think Metagross is the only one that can really challenge Dragapult as the best pseudo-legendary. Because it has an even bigger move pool, I would say, especially if we also give it Meteor Mash. And while it doesn't have any immunities that matter, since Poison does not really exist in Gen 1, Metagross does have a quad weak or resistance. It has a quad resistance to Psychic, a regular resistance to Explosion and Ice, and for the purposes of its Explosion, resisting it is good enough as being immune. And it's just better at being a mixed attacker with Stab Psychic, and it has the Elemental Punches, has Agility, Explosion, Rast is really good on it. At some point I am going to revisit for Metagross, going over how strong it is with Meteor Mash. In fact, now that I think about it, I need to do a video for Registeel for Generation Jumble Season 4. But I'm probably going to need to do one for Metagross as well, since Metagross is coming back, but it's also got a Meteor Mash as a signature move. We could talk about that later. For now, let's just get on to the replays, shall we? Starting off with the boy himself, we got Tauros. And Fire Blast alone is already pretty threatening. It doesn't do that much to Tauros, like it does a third, but I would kind of expect more. A non-crit Dragon Darts looks like it does about, what is that, 42? Which honestly isn't that bad. And with crits, it obviously does way more. Tauros doesn't want to risk the burn, but against Dragapult it's using Blizzard, so that doesn't matter too much. But to be honest, that's kind of irrelevant, because you're faster than Tauros, it can always just use Thunder Wave, which puts Tauros... Dragapult is basically just Starmie and Alakazam, but way worse. Because at least with those two, even if you get paralyzed, you could still use your strong normal moves. You don't have that option with Dragapult. You only have Blizzard, and even then, it's only doing a third. So Dragapult can probably beat you. Now, Snorlax is very tanky, so it means you kind of need to rely on Burn a little bit more for the physical sets. But to be fair, with the physical sets, it only has Earthquake, so you're probably fine. So the real thing is Amnesia. And with one Amnesia, that's already pretty threatening, but not enough to actually kill. So you're in an awkward situation if you're the Snorlax player. Do you go for Ice Beam straight up, or do you set up for Amnesia? Because at any point, Dragapult could go for a really devastating crit, which just ruins everything. And even with one Amnesia, Dragapult can survive. And this is why I kind of think, I don't think I went over this for the original video, but I feel like the Dragapult is actually kind of scummy. Because even though the crit is very high, it's not guaranteed. So I can definitely see stuff like getting 2 crits in a row to be very annoying. And now that I think about it, is there anything in the game that can survive 2 critical Dragon Darts in a row? I'm actually not sure. I guess Chansey could, but anything else? Alakazam and Executor maybe? I'm starting to realize this is a much bigger problem than I originally thought. And there's 2 Ice Beam. Not enough to kill Dragapult, but to be fair, Dragapult also did get some crits there. So, I don't know. I think I have one more going over with this Amnesia. I really don't know where to rank Snorlax. If it's physical Snorlax, obviously Dragapult just auto wins. But against Amnesia, it just depends on if you get the crit or not. And while it's high, I feel like I just can't put that in good matchups since I don't think you can... Like, I don't know, tell me what you think in the comments. I'd love to hear your input. But yeah, there goes Snorlax. By far, the best counter you have is Chansey. But Chansey, let's also keep in mind that Dragapult absolutely hates 1v1s with everything's full health. It'd much rather revenge kill. So what you're seeing now is definitely a worst case scenario. But even then, Chansey is a great counter to Dragapult for the most part and minus normal moves. But at the same time, Chansey is the best counter to basically every special Pokemon, and other Chanseys. So, Chansey already has so much work it needs to do. And now you have a Pokemon that can just get a crit body slam and kill. Yeah, it could be a lot of problems. Not to mention Dragapult has paralysis, so at any time it can just do a lot of damage. Like, Dragapult will definitely lose most of the time, since Chansey almost always has Ice Beam. But still, you can have physical moves that you can revenge kill Chanseys, or have a paralyzed Chansey be terrified of you. Now Zam here, obviously Dragapult hates paralysis, but at the same time, paralysis doesn't affect the crit rate. Not to mention with your having such an amazing defensive typing as Ghost Dragon, you don't care too much since outside of ice moves, and I guess a crit psychic or a special drop, what is Dragapult really scared of? I can't really think of anything. And even there, like, looks like each, each Dragon Dart did about 15%. So I guess Alakazam, if I'm doing the math right, I guess it could survive 2 critical Dragon Darts. But I guess it doesn't matter too much, since that still seems like a pretty free move for Dragapult to spam. Here's Cloyster. And yeah, crits are a thing. I'm pretty sure with my original video, I put this in good matchup since the risk of a crit is just too great. And that could be true. But at the same time, Blizzard is hitting really, really hard. Cloyster can crit too, and it can get a freeze. Or any chip damage on Dragapult means Blizzard will kill. So I think, even though the crit is always going to be in Dragapult's favor, I can't just put it in good matchup. Both are a huge threat to each other, and we have to acknowledge that. Same for Exeggutor, especially if you don't have Fire Blast and you're just using like normal moves as your main attacking, or Dragon Darts, I guess. I don't have much else to say. Like, you both can just hit each other pretty hard. And in case you're wondering why it said failed when Exeggutor used the Psychic, I'll explain that here for the Gengar matchup, which just boils down to Gengar scared of paralysis and can't do much to Dragapult. But normally I change Pokemon's abilities to no ability, because I just feel like, or most of the cases, it's just easier. But sometimes abilities don't work. So Clear Body was an ability I assumed wouldn't work, so I just didn't bother changing it. But when both Exeggutor and Gengar used Psychic and it said it failed, I was really confused. So that's when I realized Clear Body does work in Gen 1 custom games. It also made me realize I can probably do a season in the future, which is Gen 1 custom games for Generation Jumble, but it's abilities. But more than just like any ability or standard abilities, for example, like Tauros with Intimidate and Chansey with like Serene Grace. I think it'll be interesting if there's just a list of abilities you can give your Gen 1 Pokemon, and you can choose between them. So for example, you can give Tauros Intimidate, or you can give it Clear Body, or Serene Grace, stuff like that. I think that could be a really interesting, season. Let me know what you think in the comments. By the way, if you're not sure what I'm talking about, you should join my Discord server. I host tournaments based on the what-if scenarios that I come up with, and there might be one with abilities just like that. Could be very interesting. But now we have Jolteon. Both can paralyze each other, and since Jolteon has high special, it can actually tank a few hits. So even though Jolteon's only really hitting with a resisted Thunderbolt, it's paralysis, so both of them will probably not move for a few turns. And Jolteon has a great crit rate, so that does decent damage at the very least. So this could go either way, where both are really annoying to each other. I think both probably avoid each other, if I'm being honest. But the big difference is Jolteon has a big counter and Rhydon, while Dragapult does not. Alright, let's keep moving. Now we have Jinx. Same as Cloyster, basically. Fire Blast just has a really good chance to out-OHKO Jinx. But the same things I said about Cloyster still apply for Jinx. Except Jinx has an even better chance to crit, so it gets us even more if it could go either way. Now, Rhydon, you can use water moves to KO this entirely, but I think that's mostly unnecessary. You only take a third from Earthquake despite being 75 defense, so a Dragapult just kind of wins with just regular special moves. It doesn't really care. Now, Slowbro. Thunder Wave could be annoying, but like I said earlier, due to how great your defensive typing is, you don't... you care about Paralysis just as much as Starmie and Alakazam. Obviously, it's really important and will change how the game is played, and they prefer to avoid it if possible, but more so than both of them, since you have a lot of really good resistances, you don't really mind that much. So Slowbro here just doesn't really do that. Although Jolteon is still a good way away, since even though like it doesn't care too much about paralysis, it doesn't kill Jolteon quickly. Here's Starmie, and remember what I said about like not really caring? Like here's like a Thunderbolt. Honestly, Starmie tanked it better than I thought, but even without a freaking like Thunderbolt crit, just Dragon Darts. Just a 50 base power Dragon Darts did 36%. Starmie is so scared of Dragapult. And Blizzard does good damage, don't get me wrong, but yeah. But it'll still be nice to put Starmie could go either way. Although I could definitely see an argument for putting it in good matchup. But not great. Definitely not great. Last but not least, we have Zapdos, which is the only Pokemon that regularly uses a speed boosting move, which means it's the only thing in this metagame that has a chance of being faster. Luckily for Zapdos, Dragapult can't really kill Zapdos pretty quickly. I don't think Body Slam does any better, so you're better off just trying to fish for Dragon Dart crits. But Zapdos has Drill Peck and can also just hit pretty decently hard, especially with a crit. But it's only a 4-hit KO. The Dragapult probably wins, and in this position here, it is very easy to revenge kill. But for the most part, it just could go either way, and there's not much else to say. But anyway, here's the tier list. I guess you can put some things like Starmie in good if you really wanted to. And even though the tier list looks really weird, it doesn't really say that. It's like, Dragapult's a lot better here than it looks. I've had Pokemon that would be an underused that look a lot better than this tier list. But with this tier list here, I'm just going to say that Dragapult... I'm actually going to explore to say that it seems like a big problem Pokemon for Gen 1. It'll make the game unhealthy. I'm not sure if it'll be too strong to ban the Ubers. There's a good chance it just gets banned just for an unhealthy environment. Especially if people start using Confuse Ray. I don't even want to think about that. But what do you think? Do you think Dragapult would be too good for Gen 1 OU? Or do you think it'll be fine? It's just really, really good? Let me know in the comments below. But until next time, this is Groundback, and I look forward to hearing from you.